WoW Midnight feels like classic again. I've been noticing this. If you go across Twitch, a lot of the classic Andys out there, the guys who used to play classic a lot and are still playing classic, they've been playing Midnight. And we're kind of, that's not crazy to see at the launch of an expansion. We see all the Twitch Andys get together and they're all playing the retail version of the game. And then they all kind of teeter off after a little bit of time has passed. Well, a lot of them are still playing Midnight. Is it true right now that classic Andys are actually enjoying Midnight? And is the reason they're enjoying Midnight is because Midnight feels more like classic WoW? Let's check this one out here from Rotan as he gets into the reasons why classic and why the classic Andys are enjoying retail again as Midnight feels like classic again. Let's check this one out here real quick.
A new WoW expansion is out, and it's that familiar time period again. It's been about a month since Midnight's release, and this time always has a certain vibe to it. People are exploring the new zones, leveling up, figuring out the rotations, and most importantly for me, not everything about the world in the expansion is solved yet. That feeling is what made me fall in love with WoW in the first place. It almost feels like classic again, but normally that feeling only lasts for a little while. This time though, something feels different. The more that I play Midnight, the more that it seems like that classic feeling isn't just a temporary launch moment. Who knows though, maybe it's still too early to tell. Though there are...
Maybe. I will say, I don't know if it was because the tiered raid release or anything, but this expansion still feels very new to me. Like I haven't hit my, this is my casual stride. Now I'm like mid-season. I got my to-do list I do feel still like there's a lot of shit that I'm doing for the first time. I don't know if it's just like me being a fucking casual Andy or just there's a lot of shit to do in the game. I think maybe it's a combination of both. But even leveling up, you guys saw me. I enjoyed the leveling process so much. I really did level in Midnight like a classic way where I just stayed on ground mounts the entire time. And I think the game really did lend itself to that. I thought the zones were beautiful, the storylines were cool, and overall I just enjoyed leveling a lot, which is a very classic way to play the game. And then right now, through raiding and everything else, I've been enjoying it a lot. You play 45 minutes a day. I play a little bit more than that. But I will say, like, just it's been fun. And even for you guys, some of you guys in chat are complete DJs who play this all the time. I think a lot of people would say that they don't feel like they've hit that that wall of a lack of shit to do or just a very routine level of shit to do right now. I still feel like there's just a lot going on in the game right now. It does feel good.
Design choices all over this expansion that seem to slow things down a bit and maybe be a return to form of sorts.
I'll be fine, Ray.
And if that's true, it might mean that Blizzard is finally starting to listen to something the community has been telling them for years. The first thing that I noticed while playing Midnight was the story. Even though the expansion begins with the world-ending threat, it quickly hits a kind of pause button, with the Sunwell being overloaded into the sky.
Right.
The immediate crisis is averted, and suddenly a lot of major lore characters are standing around asking the same question. What do we do now? And that's where something very Warcraft starts to happen, like even pre-WoW type Warcraft. The Light's Vanguard and their paladins have their own ideas about the Sunwell, the Blood Elves have theirs. Questions start popping up everywhere. Who actually has authority over this thing? We certainly don't want dark or void magic around this thing right now, so what does that mean for warlocks, void elves, demon hunters, or even the players themselves of those classes?
I will say there is some very politicky Warcraft shit going on here. That's very different from some of the story and simplicity of WoW has kind of felt like childish. Like, we're united against the threat, Horde and Alliance. We're going to hold hands and touch tip to tip and go fight against the enemies of Azeroth. A lot of that shit was like, it's very anti-Warcraft. If you go back to like classic WoW days, a lot of the lore is very deep. There's a lot of factions. There's a lot of factions within factions. There's a lot of politics going on. It was very deep lore. And then a lot of that just became very surface level. It felt like, especially through like Shadowlands and shit, we're just like, oh my God, there's no real lore here. We're just fighting against this bald fucking big nipple guy. So now we're all uniting against the Void, but there's a lot of back end shit going on. The Paladins and the Lights Vanguard, all these guys are in Silvermoon. The Blood Elves are kind of fucking racist. They don't like all this shit. Even the Horde showing up, they don't really like it all happening, but they need them. There's a lot of like back-end shit. Even the Zandalari trolls, there's a lot of stuff, or not Zandalari, the Amani trolls, a lot of stuff going on with them on the back end. There's deeper storytelling, I would say. And the deeper the story gets, the more real and immersive it all feels. And I do feel like Midnight is doing that very well.
And on the topic of the light, Midnight actually explores a nuance there too. Is it really just this simple good versus evil battle between light and void? Or is the light just another source of power that can be bent for either good or ill? The story starts to sow some seeds of doubt, showing a darker side to the characters who have always been portrayed as pure and righteous. Then there's the Alliance presence in Silvermoon, the Horde capital. How do the Blood Elf citizens feel about that?
They don't like it.
How are we going to make that work, given the tensions of the past? They even make a Horde-only section of Silvermoon, which I think is a pretty awesome detail, and I enjoyed it, especially as a Horde player.
Yeah, I'm going to raid that
Instead of
zone.
everyone just coming together in some sort of neutral hub like Dornegal or Valdrakken and then come together and defeat the big bad, Midnight actually has slowed down and explores the obvious friction between factions, the politics, the culture, infighting.
Yes.
These are all in the mix. And they also haven't been afraid to make some permanent changes for some characters and their arcs. And that's good old Warcraft.
Yeah, Thraxian.
Along with the
Interesting how he
return to
died.
form storytelling, this old type of philosophy shows up in the world itself too. We of course have returned to Eversong Woods. It's a beloved zone for a lot of players, especially if you're a Blood Elf.
Yeah.
This zone has been untouched for 20 years. It's always existed in the Burning Crusade era, so it feels really good to have it revamped. And there's definitely some fun nostalgia moments in the side quests and the world quests.
It's awesome. They did such a good job, and I think that's another reason why Classic Andes are enjoying retail right now, is they did such a good job revamping these zones in a way where they still feel like the old nostalgic zones, but they're so well done, so well rebuilt, and they've blown them out too. They're like freaking double the size they used to be. They feel new. They feel new and old at the same time. Unlike the Cataclysm revamps where they basically like destroyed old zones, completely wrecked, nostalgic places in the game. They don't even look recognizable, some of those zones. With the way they did this expansion with Midnight, no, these zones are still recognizable, and they're better than their original versions in every way. I've really loved the zones in this expansion. And damn, Harandar, the music, I mean, oh my god, that might be some of the best shit they've ever done.
We go to a lot of familiar areas, do a lot of familiar quests, and there's just a lot of references to the original version of this zone. So for me, I'm sure there's...
Harandar and Voidstorm feel a bit boring for me. A Voidstorm to me is just a lore zone. Like it's there just because they needed it there, but it's not really that expansive. I actually like the fact that we did the whole Eretor quest line where that was part of the whole leveling campaign. It wasn't a zone, but it took you back to all these old story zones. I thought that was really cool. A nice little add in there. Harandar, yeah, it's kind of shoehorned into this expansion. It's not really like a fully fleshed out Midnight zone. But I like I said, just the music alone is like that makes that zone a win for me. Because I could just sit there all day and listen to the music.
Definitely a lot of nostalgia at play here, but I would like to imagine that even for new players that never experienced that original version would also just in general get a nice feel from this zone. The imagery, the atmosphere, the feeling that it evokes, I think it's great. Of course, the Ghostlands, as we know them, are gone, but Deathhome and Windrunner Spire still are there and remain shrouded in darkness. Zul'Aman is expanded to its own zone, more than just a dungeon, and I think that zone feels really good too.
They did great with that zone.
This is actually something I've heard from a lot of the comments in my videos from you guys, is that a lot of us wish that Blizzard would just return to some of the older zones to tell new stories instead of having them be stuck in time for 20 or more years. Sticking with this theme of familiarity...
it makes the game feel alive. It doesn't make sense that the Blood Elves have not repaired Silvermoon all these, like, decades later. Like, come on, what are we doing here? So it does make the game feel more alive, and it does feel the game feel more Warcraft. It makes the game feel more Warcraft. We're not out in outer space, dicking around on other planets, or we're not in some freaking weird foreign zone that like a Shadowlands shit, where all of this doesn't even feel like WoW, and it feels almost like Final Fantasy. No, this is WoW aesthetic. If you love the WoW aesthetic, Midnight has freaking been nailing it for you.
Crafting reagents, at least for mining and blacksmithing, also are harkening back to the classic times. The ore veins that we mine are copper, tin, and silver, which are the same first 3 types of ore that you would get from any vanilla starting zone. Of course, they added some fun prefixes to separate them. We have refulgent copper, umbral tin, brilliant silver. But still, going back to this old area to get familiar materials feels awesome to me, as it really grounds me more in the world, instead of us needing to explain away why there's some mysterious super strong ore that's suddenly in Eversong Woods, even though we've been able to go there for 20 years. They're
Right.
just using the old school materials. It's easier for my brain to understand this, like what is iron claw ore or sanctified alloy? Copper ingots just make more sense.
I agree.
And small choices like that are making the world feel more grounded, more familiar, more immersive. I want to be here. So far, I've talked a lot about the vibe of the expansion, the story, the setting, the world, but how does it actually play? What does it actually feel like to experience these things in the game? And the short answer is,
Good.
It's slower and simpler.
Yes.
And honestly, that's a really good thing.
That is a direct result of the add-on pruning. And I said this a long time ago when this first came up, and I said it even before Blizzard got rid of add-ons. I'll just keep patting myself on the back about this. I said add-ons have ruined the game. They were ruining the game. They were making things that were supposed to like take you to actually think and do shit, and just simplifying it to like a stupid dumb level, which then would force Blizzard to overcomplicate the game to compensate for that. I feel like we have had a return to, yes, classical mechanics and things like that because we got rid of add-ons. And now Blizzard can actually do shit in the game that's interesting and not worry about some fucking random add-on trivializing the shit out of everything. I think it's been such a good move. I play bare bones, no add-ons, and I've been enjoying it. And I feel like the game is just better.
I actually started writing and recording all this before I hit max level because the leveling process was taking a little bit longer. The experience you gain is less and leveling is slower. By contrast, I was max level on day 2 of the War Within, and I played about the same amount, where I was level 87 in Midnight. And that's also after doing a whole zone's worth of side quests. I'm 90 now, of course, and can confirm that this expansion did take a lot longer to level up in than the War Within. And to me, that slower pace felt great, but the leveling pace itself is not the only thing that's making Midnight feel more classic. What was also interesting is at some point I went back to Eversong Woods at like level 87 and noticed that some of the enemies were level 83. So even though they scaled, they didn't scale all the way up to my level.
Which is
so
good.
To see gray mobs again in retail WoW in a new expansion area kind of caught me off guard. However, I couldn't get the footage, as I mentioned, because as soon as I hit level 90, everything seemed to scale immediately up to level 90. So much for the partial level scaling. Maybe next expansion.
I do think that it scales too hard sometimes, the game. Like, you're supposed to feel like you can go back to another zone, and it's supposed to kind of feel stupid to go, like, be there. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to feel OP. And I feel like sometimes the level scaling goes a bit too hard. And it doesn't make you feel that power gain like, yes, classic WoW did, where you go back to an old zone and you're just a god in that zone, whereas before it was a really difficult zone for you to play through. And maybe it's because of world quests that they kind of got to keep everything scaled up a little bit. But I have noticed, they turned down the scaling a bit in Midnight. Maybe they'll continue to do that.
And the difficulty of the enemies is higher too. Like when I was leveling, I had to actually pay attention if I pulled 3 or 4 enemies or I might die. It's nothing compared to Classic. If I pull 2 enemies, I'm definitely dead. But it's certainly a massive change from the usual retail. I'm going to pull the entire zone and use 1 AoE ability and they're all dead. At first, I wondered if maybe my gear was the problem. I realized that by level 88, I still had on some of my heroic raiding gear from the War Within. It took until almost level 90 to actually replace it all. That's a breath of fresh air from the status quo, where you would replace all of your gear with questing greens within the first 1 or 2 levels, no matter how good your gear was.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of praise for this harder combat and the fact that my gear actually lasted longer and mattered. For the first time in many expansions, having some good gear going into a new expansion felt meaningful. And in terms of the slower leveling, I've actually heard a lot of positive community feedback on that as well. My wife, Ambrodos, actually hit level 90 before I did. I asked her how it felt, and she said something that really stuck with me. She said that she was sad that she wasn't gaining XP anymore. In Classic WoW...
Yeah, you guys all ripped me a new asshole because I literally leveled up until the day Season 1 went live, and it was because I just enjoyed it so much. I didn't see any reason to rush through it. I was having so much fun with the story and the campaign and everything, and I knew, like, once I hit cap level, it was done. That, the fun of leveling up and getting XP and going through the adventure of it all, that'll be over. So what did I do? I milked the shit out of it. I stayed ground mounted the entire time. I read all the quest lines. I took in all the story moments and the tropes and all that. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did. I would say Midnight's some of the most fun I've had leveling up in a long time.
Leveling was the experience. Endgame was the cherry on top for a lot of people, but the real game was in the leveling and in the exploration.
Yes.
The fun was in the journey rather than the destination.
A very classic
In a
thing.
small way, Midnight
For
is
sure.
giving me that magic again. I didn't feel rushed to hit level 90 right away. And that slower philosophy is showing up in more areas too, like in how the classes actually play. If you ever played Classic, you know that your class didn't have a ton of abilities at the start, but when you did use them, they felt impactful. Let's take Warrior's Heroic Strike, for example. Sure, it took a few auto-attack swings to get up the rage to use it, but once you did use it, that hit
dick
from
move.
Heroic Strike was almost 3 times as strong as a normal attack. And if it crit, woo-wee, that was the sauce. It felt impactful, worth the wait. It felt memorable. Now, of course, Midnight hasn't culled classes down to one ability, but they did remove a lot of abilities from a lot of classes. They were
You can use single button rotation. They give you one ability.
trimming the fat. And now each cast feels slightly more impactful, even if they're more spread out from each other. Abilities
Yes,
are memorable
I do agree.
because they stand out more. And consequently, this also helps with visual clarity.
I feel like I have more thought going into my abilities and how I use them and when I use them than I did before. It did get to a level of complication where I was like mindlessly going through my rotation. Like, you know what I mean? Where I had so many buttons in my rotation that I had gotten it down to muscle memory and I wasn't even really thinking about what was happening. I was just doing it. And there was no real impact to what I was doing. I was just going through my fucking rotation. Now with less abilities, I do feel like, hey, there's moments where I break shit. I go this direction. I decide to use this ability. When I use this ability, I know what the impact really is. I do feel like lessening the complication has given me more choice with my rotation. I do. And maybe you guys are all, this guy's fucking bullshit. He don't know what he's talking about. No, I'm just saying how I feel playing my blood DK.
In recent expansions, dungeons, and especially raids, could become confusing and hard to understand what was actually going on. Which of these floor effects is the good one that I should stand in, and which one is the one that's being laid down by the enemy or boss? No one wants to be the guy that's standing in the fire. Without these flashy abilities constantly going off and muddying everything, the fights now are a bit easier to read and understand, even without add-ons. And add-ons are something else that we should talk about. Add-ons in Midnight have been nuked, or at least very much watered down. And other add-ons like Deadly Boss mods or Bigwigs have lost a lot of their functionality. When I was watching videos and reading posts about this, the reviews seemed pretty mixed. Some people were upset that their add-ons were gone, because how are they going to play now? They love their customizations, they love their unique UIs, and some of them are no longer possible. Some quality of life improvements were genuinely erased. And for those people, I can understand their pain. Others ask about the high Mythic Plus keys. What are we supposed to do now without warnings for the 15 different mobs in this poll that need to be interrupted in sequence?
And I kept saying this when everyone was freaking the fuck out. I go, watch and see. Put it on a board of things Samiccus has said that turned out to be right. I said, this season of Mythic Plus is going to be easier than any season you guys have done because Blizzard's going to dumb down the shit of all the interrupts and everything else that is required because they don't have to worry about add-ons making shit too easy anymore. And guess what's happening now? We're seeing like the highest push of keys ever early in a season. Everybody's doing plus 10s like right out the fuck. Everyone's fucking pushing keys super high right now already. Wow, shocker. You're doing all that without your add-ons. Yeah, you dipshits. Yeah, all you had to do is listen to me. I was telling you guys, we're not going to get the current version of the game without add-ons. We're going to get a different version of this game in the post-add-ons world. And just chalk it up. I'm just telling you guys, another check for Sam. Easy prediction.
Or how are we going to handle Mythic raid mechanics without automated assignments telling everyone where to go? On the other side of that coin were people that rejoiced in the removal of these add-ons, and I find myself more on this side of the argument. Joining a pug and being told to download a new week aura just for that week or that raid was really annoying.
Yeah, it was.
And it was even more so if you got kicked for not downloading it. Also, having half the raid not actually understand the mechanics because they were just waiting for a week aura to tell them what to do, that leads to tons of wipes.
Also, 36 fucking things covering your screen with UI elements for the boss. I mean, Jesus Christ, it was so immersion breaking. You're like fighting the boss through a fucking peephole. In any minute, the boss could stick his cock through the peephole into your eye. Like, that was how you were playing the game. You couldn't even see people's fucking screens. That was so immersion breaking. Now it's all clean. I got my UIs, everything split out to the end. I could see the game, enjoy the game. So much better.
If anyone had to improvise at all, like if a certain player died, you might as well just call a wipe and pull again. When I would raid lead, I always tell people, watch the game, not your add-ons. Not to mention, trying to watch a top player's stream would just drive me insane, with all their air horns and cartoon springs and boingy noises and flashing lights going off constantly.
I said it all. I was like, these guys are playing World of Add-ons. They're not even playing WoW anymore.
Obsidian scales.
Outside of MMOs, my other favorite game genre are Souls-likes, especially the actual Souls games. And in those games, you don't get notifications when a boss is about to do something. You look at the boss, you time it.
You look at the boss's animations, his voice lines, you listen, you watch, you react. Imagine that.
And you start to learn and understand the moves. It's much more engaging to play.
You guys remember in the raid when we were fighting against that big, what's his name? The big dinosaur guy, Visor, whatever the fuck his name is. And we went through the first, pull. And everyone was like, oh, man, how do we know which way the beam is going to come out? Like, how do you know which side to run to when he's about to do his big beam? And everybody in raid chat was saying, like, oh, look for the hand that he brings back with the big orb because he's going to blast it to that side and you got to run to the opposite side. And that was how we explained the fight. And then everyone got it. Rather than having a weak aura said, ding, like a big fucking loud ding, and then he goes, run to the left, run to the right. Yeah. It was so much more immersive to just tell people like, oh, you got to watch his hand go back. Whichever hand he's rolling with, you got to go the opposite way. It's just such a better way to play the game.
World of Warcraft. The real challenge for Blizzard now is, can they actually make boss fights easy enough to read and understand that losing weak auras doesn't make them unplayable? And thus far, I would say I'm pretty impressed by the telegraphing of certain boss fights in the Voidspire raids and a lot of the dungeons that I've ran through. Now, if you watch the Race to World First, they're less impressed by it, but they also have their own team of add-on developers that are basically making weak auras for them, so I feel like it's a moot point. I'm an average player, and I think it's better than it was in the previous expansions.
Yes.
It seems more like Blizzard is actually paying attention to the boss's animations, the visuals that are placed on the floor, and they're taking advantage of some of that reduced clutter from player abilities to actually show better to the player what...
In this week's reset, they're tuning up a bunch of the visuals from a bunch of the boss fights and dungeon fights and everything else, because they just want to make it very visually easy for you to tell what the fuck's about to happen, so you can react properly. And they know that, and they're doing that. This expansion is one of the best ones when it comes to like visuals of boss mechanics and everything else, being able to tell what's going on, and they're making it even better with this reset.
It's about to happen. Now, are we on the level of a Souls game yet? No, definitely not, but it feels like a small step in that direction. This is a World of Warcraft that can be played and enjoyed at the highest level without the need for external add-ons, where a player's skill matters more than how good their add-ons are. In a way, this World of Warcraft feels new, but it also feels old. Familiar, a little nostalgic. There's a story that feels worthy of the Warcraft name, with all the intricacies and politics that comes with it. There's a world that isn't afraid to make permanent character changes and isn't afraid to let things matter. A grounded environment with materials that we can actually understand, in a zone that feels like it moved forward after being frozen in time for 20 years. It's a slower paced game where leveling takes longer, combat's a little harder, and gear feels more rewarding. Combat that feels more impactful with less abilities, less visual clutter, and boss fights that make sense without needing add-ons.
True.
And the last time I talked about game design and philosophy like this, I was talking about classic. And now I'm talking about Midnight. And for the sake of WoW, and for all of us playing it, I hope that continues. Because if it does, then Midnight might not just feel like classic, it might actually understand why classic worked in the first place.
Yes.
Thank you all for watching, and take care. As always, a special shout out to our channel members who get these videos early. If this is the first week that this video is out and you want to do something to help me out, feel free to hit that hype button. Otherwise, subscribing is always appreciated. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, great video overall, and I totally agree. And it was one thing that I said about classic. If you guys remember, when classic was becoming a thing and it was like splitting the player base, I kept saying like one really good thing about classic and its success is not that it's like, oh, anti-retail and now the game is ruined. No, to me, I kept saying was Blizzard can take notes now from what people like about Classic. They'll be reminded about what made Classic special, and they can put that into retail. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with Midnight, and it's hopefully what we're going to keep seeing going forward, is they're saying, oh yeah, this was WoW. This is what people loved about WoW, and they're putting more of that back into the retail version of the game. I think Midnight's been great in that sense, and I'm happy to see Classic Andes enjoying the retail version of the game again. A nice video overall from Rotan.